Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of Gaelic Lives. It means one thing, and that's a look around the club championships of Ulster. A busy one, lots of fallers, but one team that didn't fall is Dunloy. They are champions in Antrim of the big ball variety. I'm joined by Brent McTaggart. You told me earlier on the phone you survived the Crea lorry, so uh, what an achievement for the club, Brenton.
Yesterday was the culmination of years of hard work. Really, it was an exceptional performance by the lads, and the homecoming was something special. Like so, it was it really was.
I like it's become iconic. The blue lorry, the green and yellow. You probably had the camera out. I would imagine capturing memories for a lifetime. So, I, I suppose on the actual achievement itself, to beat Cargan, a club with like absolute an immense level of consistency in this competition, like that says an awful lot as well, does it not?
Without a doubt, Cardigan chasing four in a row. The last time they were defeated was the semi final stage in 2021. I can't even remember the last time they were beaten in the final. That's the calibre of team that Dunloy were coming up against yesterday, and uh, Dunloy knew they were going to have to be at their absolute best to try and get anything out of that game. I'm not sure whether Cardigan were ready for Dunloy at their best, to be honest with you, because um, Dunloy looked so comfortable for nearly the full hour, like so that the homecoming itself, the iconic Crea Lorry, that's stretching back now till 1990 was the first time Dunloy ever won a championship in any hurling championship. I was only 9 years old, but I can remember that Crea Lorry creaking its way up through the main street then, and legends of the village in the back of it, and the celebrations. If I'm being honest, I think we've even upped that again after yesterday. The smoke bombs, the fireworks, the pyro that was going on and around the village was unbelievable. I felt like I was the only sober person stood there with my camera.
I was chatting to Dom this morning. He was hoarse and I heard him in the background talking about getting a carry organised and getting something planned. So I would say Monday is going to be a day to remember. But I suppose, like you said to me a couple of weeks ago at Owen Begg, and I don't know if you were joking or what you really meant by it, but I remember you saying something like, "If we took the big ball seriously, we would be good at it." But there's obviously a load of talent there as well, Brenton. You know, we can talk
Ser-
about everything else, but there's talent in the middle of it.
these here lads that the vast majority of this group of players, it stems from winning minor and football double in 2016 and 2018.
Hmm.
Took a wee bit of time to gel it together at senior grade, sorry, at intermediate. Um, but once they finally get up into intermediate and then playing Division One football in Antrim, especially this year, it has definitely helped the lads. Like so, it has. It, it's it's hard to put into words just how exceptionally talented they are. I put a post up on the social media just last night whenever the adrenaline was starting to lessen down a wee bit,
Whenever you get back to normal.
when I was trying to get down to normal levels. But honestly think that these lads, if they were to take their hand to anything at all, they'd be brilliant at it. And that's not down to individual brilliance. It's just how they are as a team together. There's such a bond between them all. They've won so much. Yes, everybody knows their accolades in hurling, but there's a lot of them boys would maybe be better footballers than they are hurlers. Now, don't ask me to name them because I'd end up falling out with every boys. So, but um, they just really are exceptional athletes.
And like you're seeing them through the lens of a camera. You're up right. You're along the sideline. You're capturing those. Like we did a piece with Sean Paul McKillop a few weeks ago, and he said, "When you're inside the wire, you're privileged. Like
Mm.
you're seeing the action. You're as if you're nearly playing. You're just a few inches outside the line. So what's that like over the last day, and I suppose up at Corrigan, like you saw it.
I look Corrigan Park. Whenever you're in there, it's not exactly the most tight club ground or county ground, if you know what I mean. You know that you're whenever you're pitch side, you're away from the crowd slightly. So you are, but the crowd and atmosphere and everything that was there yesterday, I felt like I was playing in the full forward line because I was right on the touch line, like but with the crowd and everything that was there, I felt like I was in the middle of the crowd too. You know, just was a special day, and it all whenever you're there, you know, I was there with the camera, yes, and I was trying to take notes. I'll emphasize trying. You'll know yourself that's not the easiest thing to do whenever you're trying to do a match report on your hometown club. But it's you have to try and withdraw yourself away from the emotions of it. But that was mission impossible for me yesterday. There, like so, it was. You know, it was an incredible hour. Like so, it was to be in there, to be in the middle of it. Sean Paul hit the nail on the head. It really is privileged territory to be there to try and contribute in some small way. You know, to add the memories for everybody that was there.
Because that is history. That's
Aye, well,
you know.
that's history. I think Sean, the captain, Sean Elliott, whenever he did his speech, um, he was thanking everybody, but he started off by thanking his granddad, Don McGuire. Don's one of those lads one of those men, originally a Greenlock man, but moved to the village and has been Dunloy through and through, Dunloy football through and through. And he would have been one of the most proud men in Dunloy yesterday, seeing, you know, we had two grandsons there as part of that their team, Sean and Nigel both. And Sean put out a special word for him in his speech. There's not the thing that almost got the biggest cheer of the day, so that everybody recognises that with Don. But the mark of this here team and how they realise what they're doing is that they brought Don onto the back of the Crail lorry, bringing him into the village as well. So they did, which I just thought was a lovely touch.
I was chatting to Kevin McQuillan last week for a Gaelic Life piece, and he said to me he had two Dunloy debuts, one in the championship and an unofficial one as a 14-year-old when he was too young to play minors, and they could only find 14 men. And his dad says, "You may go home and get your boots." But to go from that to be champions of Antrim at senior level, and like Lakes of Anthony has been through it all with underage and that, so it's bound to be so special for those people because, like, from 1990 onwards, like the Dunloy hurlers were, you know, the talk of Ireland. So there's been a few unsung heroes. I'm not trying to put you in the spot because you could probably leave out somebody, but there has been a lot of work put in to make this happen.
Without a doubt, and I'm not going to be naming anybody because it's impossible to name everybody that deserves to be named. The work that has went on there, you touched on it a wee bit there. That was a wee bit of a joke, and whenever you're bantering with people at matches, you know that I always said that if Dunloy took football seriously, you know, we'd be hard to work with. Dunloy does take football seriously. You know, these here lads do take everything that they do. You know, they're winners, like so they are. You know, whenever you have that mentality, you just want to go out and keep on competing and keep on winning. So you do. But look, it's not that long ago. Dunloy were in Division 3 in Antrim. I think you're looking at about 10, 11 years ago. Competing at intermediate, it was one match, on and out, so it wasn't at an intermediate level. But that's whenever the club started to get it right and getting the dual aspect of things together and how to push on to try and be successful in both codes, because the work was being done at underage and there was a realization that, you know what, if we get this here right, we could have a real good blend of football and hurling talent coming through. So you have to give the Dunloy club and the people that's involved a lot of credit there for sure.
One final point, and I suppose the Camogues missed out on it all because they had their own final, and that's probably disappointing. And does that just point the fact that when integration does come and knock on the door, it needs to knock it properly? Is that?
The Camogues, it's funny. I didn't get to the match because I had to beat out that report, so I had for the senior game. But they coming up against a seriously good Lochgill team there, and it's disappointing. The whole team, the whole Camogues were there to welcome the footballers home, so they were all part of it and very much. Their efforts were recognised, so they were as well. There's just it's not just the people will see Dunloy and have seen Dunloy just as a hurling club, but they're a football club and a very, very good camogie club as well. It's just they've come up against an exceptionally talented Lochgill camogie team in recent years.
Final quick-fire one for you before you go. If you end up in the Monday Club, here's the mission we're going to set you. What sport are Dunloy going to invent next? Because you said these boys could put their hands to anything, so there's something for you. You can come back to us with an answer.
There's a lot of ones doing rounders these days. Hey, we'll fire that one and round the Valley Dun later on.
There you go. Rounders training Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. Bring your gear.
The numbers might be low, Mal.
Brendan, thanks a million for your time and enjoy the rest of your celebrations. And don't forget to check out Brendan's Facebook page. There'll be loads of emotion in those photographs. Brendan, thanks a million for your time.
No bother. Thanks very much, Mal.
So that's the scene in Antrim. We're now moving across to Cavan, where Kingscourt weren't top dogs for a while, but they're now standing as champions. So it ties into another memorable weekend. And what's the story in Cavan, Niall?
Yeah, brilliant one for Kingscourt, and some turnaround from 2 years ago where they played down in the final and they were basically trounced that day. They conceded 5 goals. So funnily enough, they actually a very poor start against Cavan. On this occasion, they were 4-0 down, and the lad over in Cunningham stretched it off in the 22nd minute when they were 4 points in the race. So it wasn't looking that good, but they turned things around brilliantly before half time. To the extent that they were leading by 2-7 to 8 at the interval. So they were well in the 70s by half time, and it wasn't a vintage display from down there. And obviously they tried to come back into it in the second half, but they had 9 wides, and they only 2 scores in the day as well, which was very really isn't going to be enough to win a county title, particularly on the new rules. And brilliant day out for Kingscourt. Jordan Morris did the bulk of the scoring for them. I think he finished with 9 points, but great performance and a great achievement, and I'm sure particularly after disappointment a few years ago, and great achievement for the manager Colin Kelly as well. He's come in this year and he's done a great job, and they had a great championship all around, like from the very off, and showed a lot of resilience. There were a couple of games when they were 10 points down and they came through it and whatnot, so that's off the stars.
And man, I know the Donegal final was on yesterday, maybe not as historic in terms of a new winner as Antrim and Cavan was, but historic nonetheless with Naomh Conaill still on top.
Yeah, it's just a remarkable level of consistency, and I've said this often before, you're always intrigued by the team who keeps delivering. I think Gidor haven't watched the match back fully. I've only watched bits and pieces this morning there, but it would seem they just they missed a few chances, possibly whenever they were on top. But to be fair to Naomh Conaill, they're always backed into a corner. They always come back. And as I say, like Leo McClune, Brent McTaggart, Owen Wade, and Anthony Thompson, they've got 8 county medals, all the county medals that they've won, and to be delivering at that level is remarkable. And then you've the likes of Finbar Rorty coming in for his first medal, Max Campbell, Shea Mulroe, the new kids, they always seem to be able to bring in fresh faces. And then obviously they won the reserve championship as well. So I saw a thing on Facebook Live last night where the cups are arriving back in Glenties. I'm not sure if it's Fintown or Glenties or wherever they do their homecoming. So that's remarkable. And I suppose from Gidor's point of view, they're up around the top of the Roll of Honour, I think they could have went level with Unions, I think, if they had won yesterday. I think that was the way it was. So that was their first time to lose this year in the championship, and a really unfortunate time for that to happen. But they seem to have been coming with a lot of youth recently too, as well as Four Masters. Goodore have been in those underage finals, but that's no consolation now. But they seem to have the materials that would tell you they're not going to be a million miles away again. But the story is all about Naomh Conaill. They were gone against Tyrone, Max Campbell's goal, and then I think Shea Mulroe might have scored something like 8 points that day against Four Masters whenever they were backed into a corner, and then yesterday and then a special note, like manager Martin Regan, he's been involved in 6 of those county titles as manager. A remarkable achievement for him, and fair play to Naomh Conaill, and nobody will be queuing up to play them in Ulster. When Glen won the All-Ireland, Naomh Conaill was as tough a nut as they got along the way. So that's the story in Donegal, and I think we've got a wee bit of footage from the camp. You were talking to somebody, Sean Ray.
It was Ryan Ferry. He was thankfully at the game from Donegal News, so he caught up with one of those young guns that you mentioned, man, Shea Mulroe. So we'll hear from Shea now, and then we'll look back at all the semi-finals from across Ulster that we played over the weekend.
All right, Shea, listen, sum that up. What does that feel like?
There's a lot of things going to that to sum it up, but just delighted to get over the line. Probably another one of those games where we weren't kind of beat. I was talking to you a few weeks ago, and I said that after the Tyrone game, and it was kind of similar again, 4 Masters, and then again today. So just delighted to get over the line today, and some feeling, especially the reserves too. That's massive. They kind of give us that bit of spirit now to come on. We need to go on and do this. So delighted with the 2 cups today.
Listen, some big moments in the game again. So much excitement, so much drama. You kicked the 2-pointer right at the end. Once it left your boot, you knew it was over.
Looking back, it probably wasn't the right thing to do. It's like something you'd see online, but where it goes wide. But no, thankfully it went over. I hit it, and then I celebrated, and then no one in the crowd was celebrating. I looked back, and it was kind of swiveling right. But thankfully it went over and got us in extra time.
Right, and then you just kicked on in extra time because it was almost like you guys had the momentum. Yeah. You drove on. I think you went in front for the first time in extra time.
Yeah, that's probably not like us going in front, but I think we just kind of had the legs probably on them. We kind of had, and you know what, I've been saying it all year, but we had the bench. We emptied some of them players on the bench. McTaggart, I'm absolutely delighted for him to get his championship after a long few years for him. So delighted for him, and delighted for all the boys that came on, because ultimately they did change the game. Mark McTaggart. There's loads more. I can't even name them all, but that was probably the difference. When they came on, injected a bit of energy, and we went a few points up.
Yeah, and listen, the winning feeling is hard to beat. And I'm sure you'll have a great night tonight. But focusing after this, get a few days out of the way and focus in on Ulster.
Yeah, 100%. As you say, it's not really over. The job isn't really done, because in 3-4 weeks you have another game now against the Monaghan champions. So look, as you say, we'll enjoy this night, tomorrow night. Don't know about the night after that for you boys, mate, but look, we'll enjoy these few nights, and we'll regroup then and look forward to the next game.
Good man, Shea. Well done. Thank you.
So on the semi-finals played out, that's the 3 county finals that were played over the weekend. The semi-finals, we'll go to Tyrone first now, and two big games in Tyrone. One finished a draw, and one saw the champions knocked out. So plenty of drama as always in the Tyrone Championship.
Yeah, no, it was a massive day yesterday, and probably the 2 most eagerly anticipated semi-finals in years. You had the Tyrone against their parish rivals, Naomh Conaill, appearing in the first ever senior championship semi-final up in Dunloy yesterday. It ended up a draw, which is probably fitting, because any time those 2 teams play, there's never anything between them. In terms of how the game panned out, it's really hard to parse it all, because so much happens in these games, but not quite started well. Monaghan scored the first 3 points. He was absolutely flying in 15 minutes, and then Tyrone were dealt a bit of a blow, and Danny Fullerton has been the main score getter. He's taken off for injury, so he's obviously out for the replay on Friday night. After he went off, he got a goal shortly after that, which was after he's a bit of fresh life into Tyrone's challenge. Macquarie ended up a couple of points ahead at the half time, and in the second half it was just helter-skelter stuff, and there are a few contentious calls in relation to whether shots went over the bar, went wide, and everything else, and But they end up a draw. A few big moments in injury time as well. It looked like James Donaghy was through in goal, but McTaggart was back there and he got the ball off him. That was a big moment. And then down the other end of the pitch, Cavan pulled off a brilliant block, and Gareth Donaghy, and we won it again on Friday night. There will be a lot of big crowd at that one. Then obviously in the second match, Celtic they thrown the Argyle Cairn, so the wait for a team to do back-to-backs and thrown goes on for another year. It's been a good 20 years at this stage. Interesting sort of game. Celtic, I thought Celtic were very good in the first half. So Argyle had some brilliant moments. Really Cavan got a cracking goal after a pair pass with brother Dara, but Celtic finished half really strongly and scored a penalty as well. So they were pointed to up at the break. Then Argyle were probably the better team in the third quarter. I think they scored 4 points in a row, and Michael Gallagher was back harder for Celtic. So it sort of seemed that the pieces were falling into place for Argyle, but Celtic, for their credit, pulled out the bag in the final 10 minutes, a few late scores, and they took the spot in the final. Brilliant achievement, their third final in a row, their first since 2019. Just remarkable consistency levels from Celtic. So, hats off for them. So it'll be Celtic versus Lochmacorry or Carrickmore in the full county final.
One to look forward to. There's going to be a new champion in Tyrone. There's going to be a new champion in Armagh as well, and there's going to be a first-time winner in Armagh because it's Monaghan and Cullyhanna that's going to meet in the final after an absolute crazy weekend of semi-finals in Armagh. I suppose it'll start with Friday night. It was Clonard against Monaghan, and Clonard, obviously the defending champions. They reached the Ulster semi-final last year. Lost a couple of boys to injury and had Tiernan Kelly sent off against Armagh Cairn in that semi-final and only lost by a point. So Clonard were being billed as an Ulster contender this year, but just didn't reach the levels that they usually do. And that's down to Monaghan's hard work, their kick-out press, their intensity in the first half was brilliant. Now Grimley got a point after 11 seconds, and that just set the tone for the rest of the first half. And Monaghan, they went up, I think they were 6 points up at half-time. It was 10-4, and they should have been 10 to 12 points up. They missed an awful lot of chances. I don't know, speaking to Mark Hart and Adrian O'Donnell after the game, that was something they referenced, that if they're going to go on and win the championship now the next day out, it's that efficiency in front of the post. They still have plenty to work on. So Monaghan were fully deserved. Darragh McMullen, who obviously everybody will know from his Armagh season, was in superb form. He might only kicked a point, but his pace, his direct running style, his playmaking ability, Clonard, just they seemed to switch markers every now and then, but they just couldn't do anything to tie him down. So it's history for Monaghan, having been in the final from 1998, and that was their first ever appearance in the senior final. So this is only the second one. So a historic moment for them, whether they're going to win it or not. The Saturday's game was so dramatic. It's hard to put into words how Cullyhanna won this game. And I'm sure if you were talking to any of the Cullyhanna supporters or players today, they're probably not sure either. Crossmaglen dominated this game for 50 minutes, maybe 52-3 minutes. They hit Jason Duffy got Cullyhanna off to a really good start. He had a 2-pointer inside the first minute, but Cross just dominated. They hit the next 10 points. Ashton O'Neill, I think he scored 7 of them, a couple of 2-pointers, and Cian McConville was electrifying on the night as well. Cross went in at half time. They hadn't kicked a wide in the first half. They were 15-8 up at half time. Cullyhanna did muster a bit of a comeback at the start of the second half. They got a goal from Shea Mulroe and a point from Gavin Duffy just to keep them in contention, but Cross just matched that straight away. Cian McConville got 3 points and Paul Hughes got a point, so suddenly that Cullyhanna's comeback was sort of wiped out. And then with about 10 minutes left, everything just turned. It's hard to pick out a specific turning point. Cian McConville picked up a black card, and the Cross goalkeeper, he kicked one over the sideline, and then he was blown up for taking too long with one. So those frees just got Cullyhanna back into the game, and they rattled off the last 10 points, and he had Newton kicked 9 of them, including an absolute spinner for a 2-pointer to win the game. So massive achievement for both Cullyhanna and Monaghan. It's the ideal final, both sides going for the first ever championship title. Both have been building steadily over the last couple of years. Obviously, Monaghan haven't hit the same heights that Cullyhanna have in terms of they won the All-Ireland Intermediate a couple of years ago. But it's going to be a class build up and a class 2 weeks to look forward to the game. And no matter who comes out on top, it's going to be a historic moment. So plenty to look forward to in Armagh. There were also semi-finals in Derry, Mall, and like Armagh, there was a big hitter knocked out surprisingly at the weekend.
Yeah, two very difficult games to call, and the same four teams have have been in the semi-finals for the past 3 seasons. We're going to have, it's the second time since 2013 that either Glen or Slaughtneil won't be in the final. It's Magherafelt against Newbridge. Newbridge are the champions, Magherafelt haven't won it since 2019. Magherafelt 4-15, Glen 1-14. They led 2-12 to 7 at half time, but the writing was on the wall as early as, I'm not sure the minute, but they led 1-5 to a point. Keelan Higgins, one of their newcomers, he hit a goal. Actually, from the last time Magherafelt won the championship, they've only got 5 survivors left, so a really fresh approach with youth. They just had so much pace. They came into the game probably as the team of the last 4 that had the best form, and the question marks were exactly where they at. And as I say, when they were 1-5 to a point up, they were just very, very potent. Conall Higgins added a second goal before half time. Glen struggled with their kickouts. Magherafelt had done really well, and Blahy on the kickouts as well. So it's obviously something they focused on, and they just had, as I say, they were just electrifying, Sean, from the point of view where Glen were maybe going sideways with passes. Magherafelt were just going straight through the middle. And as I say, at halftime, like Glen had got it back to 5 points, and then Alex Doherty had a shot. It was maybe more of a half chance, but it went straight to the goalkeeper. And Paddy McLarnon, Dan Higgins transitioned the ball up the pitch, and Conor McCluskey put an absolute rocket into the top corner, and that put it out to 11 points at that stage. So, they've got it back. They could potentially have got it back to a manageable amount, and that just opened up the gate. That opened up the gap. Put them 8 points up. Sorry, my mistake. Put them 8 points up, and then Zach Gavigan got a goal straight after that. And Glen were never really, once Clucky hit that goal, they were never really looking at coming back, to be honest. Magherafelt full value for their win, and as I say, they've been picking up a wee bit of form, and they'll take a bit of stopping in this final, but at the same time, there's absolutely nothing won, because Glen went to a final in 2019 after an impressive semi-final performance, and then Magherafelt beat them, so the shoe's on the other foot now. Newbridge were 21 points to 116 winners over Slaughtneil. They led 14-8 at half-time. Slaughtneil got off to a brilliant start. The first 2 scores of the game, then they were wasteful whenever they were on top. Newbridge, who have struggled with their kickouts in recent games, they started to go long. Nathan Rocks booming his kickouts long. Conor Doherty, Conleth McGrogan doing the flick-ons, and then Newbridge's runners, Conor McAteer, Mark Doherty, Callum McGrogan. That pace caused Slaughtneil plenty of problems, and as I say, they led 14-8 at half-time. They also had a goal chance. Eamon Young hit the top of the crossbar whenever Newbridge were on top, so they were deserving of that lead at half-time. Slaughtneil had a bit more joy in the second half. They brought it back to 5 points. I think at 3 different times in the second half, there was 5 points in it. And then it wasn't until Slaughtneil got a penalty. Padraig Casti, who was heavily involved in everything that Slaughtneil did, he passed it to Finn McEldowney. He was upended. Penalty, Shane McGuigan to the back of the net, and that brought them right back into the game. Christopher Bradley kicked a 2-pointer. And then it ebbed and flowed for a while, and then with about a minute left, maybe 2 minutes left of normal time, Slaughtneil kept the ball for probably, Sean, close to 3 minutes. Sides level, you got the feeling the next score is going to win the game. And with Slaughtneil being so good on the ball, they were keeping the ball out of contact because of Newbridge's pace, and they did it really well. And then Shane McGuigan kicked Slaughtneil into the lead, and as it turns out, I suppose it's a controversial one where footage now shows that his foot was on the line, so it should have counted as a 2-pointer. And whenever I watched it back last night at home, you can see that. But so Slaughtneil were 1 up at that stage, and could have been 2 up. The next moment was probably the key moment in the game, which is probably unfortunate that a game that was so entertaining, and both teams had their spells. It came down to one questionable decision where the ball broke in the middle of the field, and Patsy Bradley seemed to pick up the ball and it was knocked out of his hand, but the referee deemed Patsy to have delayed that. I assume you're in a press box, you can't really hear what's going on. I assume he deemed it to be delaying the free, so it was moved forward, and Conor Doherty kicked a 2-pointer, and Paddy McGrogan kicked an insurance point to put Newbridge 2 up. So that's a dramatic finish for Newbridge. Absolute elation for them because they're obviously back in the final, but for Slaughtneil, it's just the frustration of pouring so much into that comeback, then going ahead and, left wondering over a questionable decision about, could things have been different? So that's the story, and probably backs up the whole thing we've spoke about on the pod before, where the whole thing about handing the ball back is unnatural. So again, another debate for another day. So that's the story in Derry. The champions are still on course to retain their title, but they're going to face an almighty challenge this weekend in Magherafelt. That game's on Sunday, so we'll be back on Monday to find out where the John McLaughlin Cup is going to sit over the winter.
Yeah, and I could say the same thing about Monaghan Mall. The champions are still on course, but they're going to face a massive challenge in the final. That's going to be Scottstown and Enniskeane. In the Monaghan final, Scottstown beat Clontibbert 2-15 to 1-12. Clontibbert got off to a brilliant start. Aaron Carey got a goal and Conor McManus got a 2-pointer, which had them 1-3 to a point up after only 5 minutes of play. But for the rest of the game, it was all Scottstown. Scottstown actually outscored them 2-14 to 9 points for the rest of the game. So that probably just tells us the sort of game it was. Began got a 2-pointer. Rory Began got a 2-pointer. He didn't only score one; he scored several. While Darren Murray got a goal as well. So from being 1-3 to 0-1 down, Scottstown were 1-5 to 1-3 up all of a sudden, and Jack McCarran got a goal. Began got another 2-pointer. And they were 2-9 to 1-7 up at half time, and they just saw it out in the second half as well, and finished with another brilliant 2-pointer from Rory Began. And anybody that wants to see it, it's doing the rounds on Twitter. So it's certainly worth checking out. He was beyond the 45-metre line, a huge 2-point kick, and that was the final bit of action. So Scottstown into the final. Obviously, they'd drawn with Clontibbert in the group stages, and they'd also lost to Cardiff. So maybe they were the bit of the kick up the asses that Scottstown needed, and they're back in the final now. They're going to take Enniskeane on a repeat of the 2023 final in Enniskeane. Of course, with John McEntee in charge, they haven't won the championship since 1948, so a huge occasion for them and a huge opportunity they'll feel to go and possibly win the championship. They beat Magheracloone in the second of Sunday's doubleheader. They beat them 23 to 12 points. A pretty convincing win for Enniskeane, given that they were actually trailing at half time. They were 2 points down at the break. Magheracloone just got the better of the first half. They were 8-6 up after 30 minutes, but 2-2-pointers from Andrew Woods at the start of the second half just helped turn the tide, and Enniskeane were well on top then for the rest of the game. So it leaves a very intriguing Monaghan County final for 2 weeks' time. That's going to be Scottstown and Enniskeane. So plenty to talk about in the coming weeks, and we'll be covering it all as usual in the Gaelic Life with our podcasts and our interviews and everything else that we'll be doing. So lots to look forward to, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Brendan earlier on for coming on board and telling us about the Antrim final. Thanks to Ryan Ferry for catching up with Shea Mulroe from Glanties, and thanks to Mal and Nell for giving us the roundup of their counties.
Thank you, Sean.